It's that time of year. The NBA postseason is here. Are you going with the favorites, the underdogs, or the dark horses? Anything can happen. The battles are hot and the stakes are high. The cash prizes, well, they're huge. So get off the bench and get in the game with DraftKings Sportsbook. Here's the deal. Right now, all new customers who bet just $5 on anything, that's right, anything, you're going to get $150 in bonus bets instantly. So what are you waiting for? Download the DraftKings app now, sign up using my promo code, BullyBall. That's BullyBall is your promo code. Keep the good vibes rolling and use your $150 in bonus bets on DraftKings same-game parlays for a shot at an even bigger payout. Again, new customers can bet just $5 on anything and receive $150 in bonus bets instantly with code BullyBall. The crown is yours. The thrill and excitement of playoff basketball and concert season is upon us. If you're looking to get on the action in person, Game Time has you covered. You can keep track of the playoff schedule and concerts that are announced with the Game Time app. You can secure tickets. This is great. This week, LA's own Ice Cube is going to be at the Forum with a legendary lineup. They've got E40, Too Short, Scarface, Exhibit, and Mac 10. Packed show. I'm not going to miss that. When I was looking at tickets last week, they were starting at just under $100 in the Game Time app. And if I found the same tickets for less, well, somewhere else, then Game Time would credit me 110% of the difference. Yeah. So if you're like me, looking at tickets last minute, here's a pro tip. They're up to 60% off with the Game Time app. Take all of the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. You can download the Game Time app, create an account, and then use the code BULLYBALL. That's code BULLYBALL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account. You want to redeem the code BULLYBALL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed. Welcome to Bully Ball, presented by DraftKings. I am Rachel Nichols, as always, Mr. DeMarcus Cousins. And who's back today? Amin Elhassan. Thank you for rejoining us. We appreciate it. Guys, I'm going to just admit it. I'm going to come to you. I'm going to tell you I am an NBA awards voter, and I would like you to make your case to me of how I should vote. This is what we are talking about on the pod today. I want some arguing. I want some lobbying. I want to know what I should be doing with my vote. So I may have a few opinions of myself. I mean, I don't know if you've ever heard me have any opinions, but I do have a few of them. But
from time to time.
One opinion, two opinions.
Once, yeah.
Something about the MVP. Anyway, but we'll talk about all of that stuff. Oh. Dude, I'm gonna take that one to my grave. Oh, I'm not wrong. I'm not wrong. And we'll talk about it today as well. Anyway, first up, I do want to discuss probably the one that kind of is the most unknown. And we'll get to MVP. We're going to build in this podcast. We're going to build up from some of the smaller awards. So let's start with Sixth Man of the Year. Malik Monk, the DraftKings favorite. And he was sort of, I think, the runaway favorite for a long time. But then he got hurt, right? Naz Reid re-entered the conversation. Bobby Portis, Norm Powell. Boogie, who do you like for Sixth Man of the Year?
I mean, outside of Monk, who, I think is more than deserving of it, but it sucks that he is currently hurt at the moment. So, it's kind of, what have you done for me lately type. So, and even with that being said, regardless, I think this would still be my choice. It's Naz Reid. I'm a huge fan of this guy. I think he's ultra talented. Could easily be a starter on a contending team. Super, super talented. He's filling in the void with the big fella Cat being out right now. He's filling in the void seamlessly at that. He just came off a 30-point game against the Lakers. Like, this dude is the real deal. So I think this is a year for him to win a sixth man, and then eventually we can see this guy add different type of accolades to his resume because he's that good of a player. So I think the future is bright for this kid. It's only a matter of time before he's in the position to be, be a 1, 2, 3 type option type player in his career. So I think that time is eventually coming. And, like I said, he has a very, very bright future. So I'm rolling with Naz Reid.
Yeah, Rachel, I love Naz Reid, But the only reason why we have a Naz Reid conversation is two things. One, because Malik Monk got hurt. Two, because Karl Anthony Towns got hurt.
Yes.
Again, Naz Reid has played well all year long. But in terms of being sixth man of the year conversation, it's because of those two injuries that happened. But when it comes to Malik Monk, in the words of the great Isaiah Thomas, I met the criteria. He's played 72 games. It don't matter how many games he misses from here on out. He met the criteria. He was far and away the best sixth man in the league. I was saying this back in January. I said, the Kings, every time he comes in a game, you feel that jolt of energy. You feel the energy of the game change. And to me, it's not even close. It's Malik Monk. Then when you talk about who coming in second, shout out to Larry Bird. You could talk about Naz Reid. And another name we didn't mention was Tim Hardaway Jr. I thought he's had a very good year for the Mavericks. But for me, it's Malik Monk. I as soon as he hit his number, I was like, there's nothing that can happen the rest of this year that's going to change my mind on that.
So winning doesn't matter?
His team was winning when he was playing.
Well, I was going to say that to me is part of it, though, is that he got hurt and they really had a rough last 2 or 3 weeks of the season. So that impacts me as a voter a little bit.
I mean, you're telling me that a team struggling to be playing team has the favorite to win sixth man of the year over a team with a sixth man of the year candidate that's fighting for number one in the hardest conference.
I would say this is what I would say.
Sense for me, buddy.
This is what I would say to you. In rebuttal to that is they weren't fighting around the play-in when he was healthy. When he was healthy, they were actually playing pretty well. And then they lost him. They lost Kevin Huerter as well. I don't want to discount that. And now they struggled towards the end of the season. But to me, that's even more of a feather for Malik Monk. I said, look, we were playing great when I played, and then I got hurt, and things fell apart after that.
What I got from that is sound like they should be starting the kid, and he shouldn't be a sixth man.
Oh, that's always the question, right?
Conversation for next year, my friend.
Yeah, that sounds like a fixable situation. That just doesn't quite make sense for me, bro.
I'm going to give you credit, though, Boog, because you were on Naz Reid since the beginning of the season. I think you said that he was the most underrated player going into this past season, and he certainly proved that, especially in the wake of Karl Anthony Towns getting hurt. So, Naz, I just want you to know, you got a fan of the big man over here, and, if you need a little PR, some agent work, Boogie is your man. He has been with you.
I'm your voice, brother.
Let's talk about Defensive Player of the Year, because Rudy Gobert is the heavy betting favorite. Heavy. Timberwolves had the number one defense in the league. Wemby, though, also considered. And producer Nate and I were celebrating Steven Jackson's birthday. And he and producer Dylan were trying to convince me. In fact, I would say producer Dylan was trying to convince both of us that Victor Wembanyama would be the Defensive Player of the Year. Cool. And I thought maybe he was drinking too much at this party, but I don't know. I mean, what do you think? Who is the Defensive Player of the Year for you?
Look, Victor Wembanyama is going to win a lot of Defensive Player of the Year awards in his career. It just ain't going to be right now. You can't be on one of the worst teams and on one of the worst defenses. Not that that's his fault, because I think anyone who's watched San Antonio play has the same question I do is, do y'all know who y'all playing with? Do you guys know who your teammate is? Because I don't think you guys realize. But it's not for him right now. At the same time, Rudy Gobert has kind of been the default answer for a lot of people because the Timberwolves had the best defense and he's their best defensive player. Who could it be? Who else could it be? I'm going to give you a different name. Bam Adebayo. The Miami Heat season, their offense came and went. They struggled offensively for long stretches. They had a lot of different lineups. They had one of the most injured lineups of injured rosters of any team in the league this year. The one consistent has been they've been excellent defensively, and Bam Adebayo is the biggest reason. He's a guy that, unlike Rudy Gobert, can guard 1 through 5 and guard them well, and he's the centerpiece to that. That's my pick. I don't know what the voters are going to pick, but if I were voting, Bam Adebayo would be my selection.
Agree with that. Okay.
You think so? You put Bam?
I like that option. For me,
I'm ready to vote for Rudy, and I can't tell if Dan Le Batard is sitting just off camera from Amin down in Miami there with some sort of weaponry telling, say Bam, say Bam. I don't know. Would you vote for Bam over Gobert? I know for some voters, Boogie, the issue is, would Rudy Gobert be a 4-time Defensive Player of the Year if he wins this award, and what does that mean? Right. I know that that's like a big issue too with some former players.
My thing is this: like, when you really, really look at the history of our game, and you look at the history of these awards, and you think about the impact these type of guys that win these awards have on these teams, I just don't get that vibe from Rudy Gobert. And this is no knock to him. I'm probably going to get a lot of backlash. You know, I sound like the bitter old head, whatever. Like, I'm a fan of basketball, and I look at it for what it is. Like, you can't have a potential 4-time Defensive Player of the Year that doesn't finish games. I'm never going to be okay with this. Like, it literally, like, for me, I see things in black and white. If you're the best defender on the best defensive team, you should never be off the floor. It should never be a scenario to where you're not able to fit into the scheme. That doesn't make sense. So how do we keep awarding this guy that can't even stay on the floor in the playoffs? We've seen it time and time again. Like, it does not make sense. This is mind-blowing to me. It's easy for me to pick Wemby. Like, we can sit here and say he's on one of the worst defensive teams in the league. I think that's more credit to Wemby, because now you really stick out as a defender. If you got a bunch of, above average defenders around you, it can make you, do things at a higher level. When you're sticking out as the only guy defending and you're still exceeding the guys that are so-called the favorite, like, it doesn't add up. It doesn't add up. Bam. For me, that's an easy choice. This is a guy that we've seen time and time again guard the 1 through the 5. For me, that's a guy that's a great defensive player. Like,
Rachel, I'm going to put it to you like this. There's not an offensive lineup you can throw out there where I would say, oof, Bam wouldn't fit right here. Let's sit Bam and put someone else in.
Exactly.
I get it. I mean, you do have to look at the fact that Minnesota had the number 1 defense for a big chunk of the season. For a big chunk of the season, Miami wasn't necessarily even in the playoffs. Like, I mean, it is a little bit of how your team is doing. I think your note about Wemby and maybe, hey, he'll win plenty. He is so good. And I think that as soon as next year, he could be winning these for maybe the next 10 years. I mean, who knows? But awards are weird and fickle, and it depends on injuries and seasons and stuff like that. But he's so talented. It reminds me a little bit of when the Spurs beat the Cavaliers in 2007 in the finals. And there's that footage of Tim Duncan pulling LeBron aside and said, thanks for letting us win one before you took the main stage. Thanks for letting me have one more, right? You're next. And that was such a poignant moment. And of course, LeBron did kind of move there. And I do feel like that's what's going on with Wembanyama, is that we're all just sort of waiting until next year when he just becomes unquestionably the most dominant defensive player. It is hard as a voter for me to figure out what to do, because you are not supposed to take that into account, that he's going to be a 4-time Defensive Player of the Year if he wins. You are not. It is about this regular season only. That is what we are instructed to vote on. And it is hard to, on the one hand, think about that and think about, well, they've had the number 1 defense, and he's obviously been a huge part of that, and really the anchor of that. And everywhere he's gone, I mean, he did it in Utah, he did it in Minnesota. He's been consistent with the effort he's put forward. But then also, it is hard not to think in the back of your head, am I putting this guy up with Ben Wallace, who won 4 Defensive Players of the Year? Am I putting him up with Hakeem Olajuwon, who won 4 Defensive Players of the Year? I'm not. I'm not doing that. Right. So
it's not even close.
It is hard. It's not even close. But then you can only, it's what they say, you can only play against the team that's in front of you. Rudy Gobert can only compete against the guys who are also competing for Defensive Player of the Year. And if he's been the best, what is a 4th time? This is what is hard as a voter, is a little bit, because you are dealing with lots of criteria, and only one you're supposed to deal with, but the other is there and it's loud.
Right. But at the same time, you're giving the credit of a great defensive team to one guy who's not that great defensively. Like, you can't beat.
I mean, he's pretty good.
He's pretty
great
good, but he's not 4 times great.
Yeah.
That's the,
but see, again, that's I'm not supposed to be thinking about that.
But you have
I got one guy on my shoulder, and then I've got 4 times. You can't make him 4 times. That's on my other shoulder. How's that voice? Was that good? Yeah.
It doesn't add up for me, and that's just the facts behind it. Like, it has to add up, and it doesn't, in no way, shape, or form.
You're making me think about this. I like this. You guys are expanding the mind. I was sort of thinking, Rudy might be a no-brainer here. Certainly the bettors, the guys making the odds think he's a no-brainer, but they're basically, placing odds on who they think will win as opposed to who deserves to win.
Right.
I give Bam a little more consideration here. I like this. You guys are opening minds and hearts.
Really like
All right. Let's talk about most improved. We have Tyrese Maxey as the DraftKings favorite. J-Dub, Kuminga also to be considered. Maybe a dark horse in there. Boogie, who's your pick for most improved this year?
Man, I like J-Dub. J-Dub is so talented. You saw LeBron give him his love the other night. Like, even LeBron sees it. Like, you can see this kid is going to be a star in this league. He has a really, really bright future. He's a huge, vital piece to that young OKC team. He's played just as big a part in the success of that team as, a guy I consider the MVP and Shai Gilgeous. So J-Dub for me is that guy this year for most improved. I think Kuminga, had an incredible season. He's made a huge jump, but the success of the team just isn't quite there to, put him in that category. And when it comes to Tyrese, this guy averaged 20 last year, 21 a game. He's averaging 25. So for me, that's kind of a trajectory of how a good player goes through his career.
You expect
Every year you get a little better. The jump that, J-Dub and Kuminga have made, like that's more so where it fits the title of this, which is most improved. So for me, I'm going with J-Dub.
Rachel, let me just start by saying, cut this tape and post it. Anytime anybody try to say that Boogie's biased, the Kentucky bias, this man has skipped not one but two Kentucky guys for awards in his pick. So I applaud you for being as unbiased an analyst as anyone out there. But I can't believe we didn't even mention my man down in Houston, Alperen Şengün. Yep. That's my most improved player. I don't care what y'all say. Now, J-Dub is a really good pick. I'm not knocking that pick. I agree with you on Maxey. He's doing what we expected in him to do.
Right.
I disagree. I'm jumping in here. I disagree. You did not. You did not expect him.
So he's doing exactly what I thought he would do, and that's not a knock. That's good. You're on the trajectory you should be.
Time out. You expected him to create a need where they didn't even have to replace James Harden. You expected that?
Well, I expected that Maxey was going to step up. Yes. I thought he was going to be this good.
You expected that they could trade James Harden away and not have to replace him.
Yes. I don't
buy it.
No, I'll tell you why.
I'm going back. I'm looking at tape.
You can go back. I said it, what they're going to get, before they even traded him, I said what they're going to get, because they're not going to get a star. No one's going to trade them a star for Harden. They're going to get a bunch of really good role players is what I said.
I get it, but then the idea was they would then have to flip that to get a star. No. That was the whole conversation around the Harden trade was, they're going to have to flip it by the trade deadline because they're going to need someone to play against play alongside Joel. And then all of a sudden, Tyrese Maxey made that disappear. I can
only tell y'all what I said at the time. I can't tell you now. Did I think that the Sixers were going to be the one seed or anything? No, I'm not going to say that. I thought he was ready to step into that role because I've seen him over the last couple of years be asked to do different things, and every time he was asked to do something different, he stepped up and he excelled in it. So I had a lot of confidence in his ability. Having said that, Alperen Şengün's the most improved player. For Kuminga, I just felt like he started the year rough, and then he had that thing where I give him credit. He called out Steve Kerr, and I said, all right, here we go. But after he talked the talk, he walked the walk. I give him credit for that. But Şengün was awesome all year long. And I think he was at a level that I don't think any of us ever expected him to be that kind of player. Maybe when he was drafted, but as soon as the first couple of years, we're like, all right, maybe not. He came and he basically changed my mind completely about what type of player he is. So that's my pick.
I don't know. I'm not mad at that either. I'm not mad at it. I think Şengün's been a revelation. That team didn't even make the play-in tournament, though.
He got hurt. He got hurt.
I get it, but they didn't. And look, it drives me crazy when fans talk about the media voting on, quote, narratives, because that implies that it's just made up stories, right? And that's not how that works. There is emotion that goes into playing basketball. There are waves that a team and experiences that a team goes through. Those are real. right? So when I voted for Russell Westbrook for MVP, I got accused of, oh, you're buying into the narrative. I'm buying into the fact that that team had KD leave them in the lurch and everything was falling apart, and Russ stepped into the gap and he lifted that team on his shoulders, and he was the most clutch player in the NBA that year, and he delivered and delivered when it counted over and over again. I believe in the story of the 76ers this year about how they had, I mean, you forget kind of how tumultuous that was. You have James Harden in China. Daryl Morey's a liar with the sign being held up. You have all kinds of stuff going on. And to your point, Amin, there was the idea of you're never going to get $1 back for James Harden. You're only getting those 4 quarters back, as we like to say. And what are they going to do? And who are they going to package one of their other first round picks with so they can get someone to play alongside Embiid? Because as you remember, the other part of that narrative was Embiid's going to start looking around. He's going to want to go to New York. He's going to want to get out of there. They better trade for someone quick. And Tyrese Maxey changed all of that. And so I don't think that's a narrative. I think that is actually what happened. And I think that kind of emotion and that kind of story happens on a team and can lift a team up and change what happens out on the court. So I don't know, man. You guys are going to have a hard time moving me off Tyrese Maxey, but I'll take all this under advisement. I'll take it under advisement. Right? I'm just saying.
Absolutely. Talk your shit.
Let's talk about Coach of the Year. Mark Daigneault of OKC is such a favorite. You do have Chris Finch of the Timberwolves, Mazzulla with the Celtics. Boogie, who is your pick for Coach of the Year?
Man, shout out to my guy Finch, man. I had the luxury of playing for this guy. He's a genius with the clipboard. He kind of created the 2 big man offense, and he's continued to flourish. What he did it in Denver, he did it in New Orleans. He's now doing it with the Minnesota Timberwolves. Like I said, he's a genius with the clipboard. He's very creative. He knows how to make, situations work that most coaches probably would, kind of deal with a sensitive hand. So Finch has been incredible this year. He's pushed his young team to heights that weren't expected. He made the move with putting the ball in Anthony Edwards' hand. He's been incredible this year. So my pick goes to Finch. He's had a great year.
Rachel, every name on this list and every name that's going to be on everybody's ballot is more than deserving. There have been a lot of great coaching jobs around the league. I'm going to say, and this might come as a shock to a lot of people, but I came to Jesus 3 weeks ago and I said, man, you're fighting against this. I mean, why are you fighting so hard against it? And I'm like, you know what? You're right. It's Joe Mazzulla. I want to make all the jokes. I want to make all the things about him, basically being a weirdo, trying to contest Royce O'Neal's shot and wearing jujitsu clothes under his half zip pull up or whatever. But the reality is, this dude has coached this team to the best offense in the history of the NBA. They've won. They clinched the number 1 overall seed weeks before anybody else even knew where they were going to be in the playoff picture. And most importantly, he lost the heart and soul of his team in Marcus Smart and managed to get better. His 2 best players became better players, more complementary players. It's not easy to convince someone who's great, hey, man, take less shots. That's not an easy convince. And then finally, and this one's huge, anybody who's got Luke Cornett, Peyton Pritchard, and Sam Hauser rotation minutes every night and they still whooping ass, man, that's a hell of a coaching job. That man's got it. My soul is like, what are you talking about? Like, nope, Joe Mazzulla is my coach of the year.
That's amazing. First of all, I've been a Joe Mazzulla fan since UConn. I thought he got way unfair flack last year. I was really, there was a lot blamed on the coaching situation last year that was not his fault. So I'm glad to see him getting the proper amount of respect that he should this year. I don't know, man. In OKC, though, that's the youngest team, I think, in the league. Is that right? Are they the youngest team in the league? To be able to coach them to be in contention for number 1, it's hard to ignore that. I do think what you guys are talking about, though, of some of these coaches, had they been able to manage egos, has been a big deal. And that's where I do go back to Chris Finch, Boogie, because somebody got in Karl Anthony Towns' ear. And I have to think Chris was involved in that, of saying, this young fellow, Anthony Edwards, you have got to figure out a way not to feel like you are the most important person in the room to get in the way of Ant being able to do what he can do. And somewhere along the way, Cat, who is a proud guy and deserves to be, by the way, number 1 overall pick, certainly can contribute a tremendous amount to that Timberwolves team, still had to a degree, step aside and say, Ant is the number one here. And he actually came out and physically said it out loud. And I think that is hard, too, for a guy to do in front of the media. And the fact that I can only assume the coaching staff had a lot to do with making him still feel important, making him feel like, hey, this is just the progression of the NBA. A new young guy comes up and this is how it works. And it doesn't mean you're less than. And it's just that, to be able to manage that situation, Karl gets a lot of credit himself for that. I always don't like it when people just give credit to the coach and not the player. The players have agency, but obviously the coaching staff had a lot to do with that. So that's ringing in my ear a little bit too, but it is hard to ignore the fact that this OKC team is so far ahead of schedule. We'll have to see. That's another one I'm having a hard time with. Let's talk MVP though. I think it's that time, boys. Jokic is the heavy favorite. Luka, SGA are in the mix. Jokic, if he won, would be a 3-time MVP. I mean, I want to let you know that last week, Boogie said that he thinks that he would go with SGA or Luka over Jokic. So I want you to tell us what you think, and then I'm going to check in with Boogie and see if he still feels that way. Go ahead, Amin.
But again, this is one of those things where there are no wrong answers. These are all great players, right? And I would throw in a couple other names. Jason Tatum is a name I would throw in there. Anthony Edwards is a name I would throw in there. Jalen Brunson absolutely is a name I'd throw in there. But hey, man, let's be real. Who's the best player in the game? Right? Like, I know Rachel want to have 2 different awards. Nope. It's one award and it's one name. And this dude, and by the way, he plays almost every night.
Right. This year, I think it would go to the same guy. I do, but get back to that.
It's Jokic. It's Jokic. Everybody else, that's not a knock on y'all. Y'all have had some amazing seasons. I've enjoyed watching everybody play, but I watched that big dude play. I know last week we were talking about how certain teams would match up against the Nuggets and, what the matchups would be. I'm like, do you got someone who could guard him? No? Game over. And that's it. And that's the reality. It's like the only way to beat him is if you have 3 7-footers who are all going to foul the hell out of him and hope that pisses him off somehow.
Where are you, Boogie? Where's your head at?
That's a solid answer for me. And I mean, Jokic is one of the best players in the NBA. I think that's a given, but that's not, what the MVP is about. And for me, when it came to these 3 guys, I'm like, well, what separates, each guy? Like, they're all, heavy dependent on the offensive end. They play make for all of their squads. So what's the difference? And for me, it was SGA, where he's a guy that plays both sides of the ball. You can't say that about Jokic, and you can't say that about Luka. And for me,
I would say Jokic is a much improved defensive player. He's not as good at defense as SGA is.
What does a much improved have to do with the guy that's leading the league in steal and is top 6 defenses in the league? Like, that has nothing to do with the guy.
Well, you just said he don't play defense. I'm just arguing that Jokic does play defense.
I mean,
not as well as SGA, but yes, he does play defense.
Well, in terms of defensive player of the year, I guess you could say, yeah, okay. So whatever. But for me, it's SGA, man. He's a guy that's leading his team on both sides of the ball, and that's something that just can't go unnoticed for me. On top of that, he's done something that nobody expected with this team this year. We expected the Nuggets to be a team that's, gonna be a title contender, gonna be in the mix. We expect that. We expect this from Luka. We expect the big games. We expect the big numbers. We never expected this from SGA. He was first team last year. He's only improved to now where he's leading his team as one of the top teams in the hardest conference this year with being in the Western Conference. He's doing it on both sides of the ball. He's averaging 36 and the numbers are crazy. And I think this is not only his year, but we now have another star, like not just a great player, but a star that we can depend on in this league in SGA. So I think everything is coming together for this young kid at the right time, and I think this year is his year. So my MVP pick is SGA.
I mean, look, none of these teams, if you took this player off, if you took Jokic off the Nuggets, if you took SGA off the Thunder, if you took Luka off the Mavs, none of the teams would be anywhere close sniffing to where they would be lottery teams. So obviously they're all of huge value to their teams. With Luka, look, he's putting up crazy numbers. And it does feel, because his usage rate is so high, that he is powering that team every time he gets on the court. Now he's playing against Kyrie, who just, last week, I think he dropped 40 something. But I think that argument makes a lot of sense from the people in Dallas about, okay, he's at least above SGA, or he's coming on strong, or he should be MVP. You go back to the Jokic argument, though, he does, in my mind. I don't know if I haven't made up a decision on who I'm voting for yet, but I will say that if he ends up being a 3-time MVP, it's deserved in the fact that he is that skilled. When we sit there and we talk about, does Rudy Gobert deserve to be a 4-time Defensive Player of the Year? That can be a hard pill to swallow because he is not up there with Hakeem. He is not up there with Ben Wallace. I'm sorry, he's not. Where you look at Nikola Jokic, he is a transcendent player. I mean, I look at what he can do, his skill set, the way he can move, the way he can operate, his passing, and then just his dominance, and the fact that he has that team so organized at the end of games. When you look at what the Denver Nuggets do, and Boogie, again, you've been on that bench, you've been in that locker room, you've been on the court with them. It is like a machine. It is precision. And you feel like Jamal and Jokic they know how they want to get to where they want to get to in those last 30 seconds, minute, 2 minutes. And that is where playoff games are won. That is where we get titles from. So I think this is a harder decision than it was a month ago. It felt like Jokic all the way, and now it's sort of like, okay, well, the Luka backers have a good case, and Boog, you're making a very good case for SGA, and I do think it should be a two-way player, and all of that stuff, but it's hard to move off who is, yes, when if the aliens came down, as Bill Simmons said, who would you put on the court? And right now, I think most people would say you'd put Jokic on the court, so it's going to be interesting to see if this ends up being close or not, because I think the conversation has gotten a lot closer in the last couple weeks. And I'll let you know once I fill out the ballot who I'm voting for. We'll have to see. All right, I want to move on to All NBA because some of the stuff seems pretty easy now that it's positionless. If you guys haven't heard out there, after years of people like me begging, pleading, desperately, please make the ballot positionless because the game is much more positionless. We are finally getting that. And that is really, it was a travesty that you had the number 2 runner-up for MVP, or the runner-up for MVP, rather, the number 2 guy in voting, not even make first team All-NBA because you had to only have one center, that kind of thing. So I'm thrilled that this is the situation, but then it kind of makes some of this conversation a little bit easier. Let's start with you, Boog. Who is your first team All-NBA selection now that you don't have to go by position?
Oh, man, I made sure to write this down, and I'm actually going to make a last-minute switch.
A tweak.
It doesn't matter what it was, but just know I'm doing it.
All right.
So for me, first team, we're going to go SGA. We're going Luka. We're going Ant Edwards. We're going Jason Tatum. And we're going to go Nikola Jokic. Second team, Brunson. Jaylen Brown, Kevin Durant, LeBron James, Giannis. Third team, Curry, Steph Curry, Devin Booker, Kawhi Leonard, Powala from Orlando, and Anthony Davis.
I was going to say, you got to say Anthony Davis at the end of that sentence,
absolutely.
please.
Anthony Davis. That's my All-NBA.
All right. Amin, what do you agree with? What don't you agree with?
It's similar. Let me just say this. It's the same names, not in the same order.
All right, who's your first team then?
So my first team is exactly the same. I have Jokic. This is my belief, especially now that we don't have any positions or whatever. Your All-NBA first team should be your MVP ballot. So if this is someone
that's an interesting question.
It should be. Like, it's the top 5 players in the league. So there should be no conversation there or no confusion there. So I got Jokic, I've got Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, I got Edwards, I got Luka, I got Tatum.
Okay.
I think that's exactly what Boogie had.
Yes.
When we get to the second team, that's where it gets interesting. So like Boogie, I also have Brunson there, right? Like Boogie, I also have Giannis there. But then I've got Kawhi, I've got Curry, and I've got Devin Booker, second team All-NBA.
Neither one of you has Anthony Davis, second team All-NBA? He's had such a good season.
He has, but it hasn't been better than Giannis or Jokic's. So that's why.
Jokic is first team.
Exactly. So he's first team. Giannis is second. As far as a big, not necessarily a center, but a big, and then AD fills out the third team for me. Easy. Yeah.
Third team. So that Rachel doesn't get worried. AD's on my third team.
Thank you.
LeBron is on the third team. Jaylen Brown's on my third team. Paolo Banchero's on my third team. And this is the controversial one because it came down to 3 different guys. And it came down to, it was Fox, Sabonis, and Halliburton. Those are the last three. And I had a lot of sleepless nights thinking about this, but I said, ultimately, I think that what Tyrese Halliburton does for his team, it transforms them from what should be a lottery team to a team that is competing for playoff positioning. And I got a soft spot in my heart for point guards. It was Halliburton or Fox, no offense to Bonus. And I went with Halliburton because I felt like Fox has help and Halliburton not necessarily up until they got
What about
Siakam.
the fall off after All-Star, though?
Yeah, I mean, he did have a fall off.
That can't just go under the rug like that.
He did have a fall off, but I still think that what he's done and what he's did is still all NBA. And I won't lie, man. The man means money, man. Why are we going to take the money away from him, man?
He's going to make plenty of money. That's besides the point, man.
So it is, I believe it's around $40 million difference if Halliburton makes All NBA versus not. That is a difficult position. This comes back to the 65 game rule for me, which is that I think it is dumb to tie it to all NBA awards. I just do. I get it. I am all with everyone who wants the players to play. We all want everyone to play. We all want to watch good basketball and we want players to play. I do not think penalizing guys on all NBA by an arbitrary number that's 65 versus 63 or 67. And you're going to tell me if it's 2 games difference, he deserves it or doesn't deserve it. I think that's ridiculous. And you saw it with Tyrese Halliburton. I spoke to him at All-Star quite extensively about his injury. And he was just telling me, he's like, I can't get the lift I was getting. And they keep telling me I need to sit for 2 weeks, but if I sit for 2 weeks, I'm out. And for a guy who has a $40 million contract difference hanging over his head, he's not going to do it. He's not going to sit. And the irony is that he may now, by playing on it, he may have gotten himself out of all NBA by qualifying because he extended how long the injury was affecting him. And now he's not the player he was in the first half of the season. And I think, Embiid has talked about, feeling rushed back that he had to go play and that led to his bigger injury. And I just think we are putting pressure on guys to play for reasons that are not the reason that we want them to be playing for. And guys who are truly hurt, these are human beings. They should get to sit for a couple games if they need to sit for a couple games, and it should not cost them $40 million. So I don't know. I just want everyone to be thinking about that as we go into next year and we try to place these All-NBA votes of, is there a way to detach the 65 game rule from at least all NBA? If you still think it should be attached to MVP, I still think that's a little bit questionable. What if it's 64? That kind of thing. But I wouldn't attach to all NBA because I think it is affecting this discussion. I mean, did you have Kevin Durant anywhere on your all NBA teams?
He's second team for me.
I didn't.
He's second team for me.
I'm already regretting it, so maybe you're right. You know what? Switch my thing. Tyrese, I love you, buddy. I'm sorry. I forgot all about KD. I got caught up.
Yeah, those guys not going to cut it for me, bro.
Sabonis, all of y'all. My bad. I love y'all. It can only be 15, so KD is in my third team. My bad.
Yeah.
So you're taking that check away from Tyrese.
Yeah. $40 million. Come on.
Brian Windhorst once calculated that, who was it who was looking for that bonus that year? Was it Embiid? It was AD. And he said he could have bought every member of the voting media, an SUV, and he would have had so much left over that.
He said a G-Wagon. Every single voter could have got a G-Wagon, and he still would have made out. And by the way, whenever I get my vote back, if that G-Wagon is still available, I'm going to let that be out there.
Well, I want to thank you both for trying to influence me and help me fill out my ballot. I will say you guys moved me on one. I'm not going to tell you which one, but I will. I just know you are with me when it comes time to fill out the pencil and make those. And I think it's going to be a fun little award season here as we get into the playing games this week. Everybody enjoy those, and we'll be back with the playoff games next week. You can catch all episodes of Bully Ball on the DraftKings Network, on the All the Smoke Productions YouTube channel, and of course, wherever you listen to and get your podcasts. Rate us, review us, think about Tyrese Halliburton and his $40 million, and we will be back next week, gentlemen. See you then.